What's up guys, it's Justin here, and today I've got the review for you of the Apple iPad Pro 10.5 inch, which I'm really excited to check out. And this is Apple's new size for the year, and it's coming from someone like me who is a university student and has been using the MacBook 12 inch for the last 2 years every single day. That was up until I spilled coffee on it a few weeks ago, so instead of buying a new MacBook 12 inch right away, I decided to give the iPad 10.5 inch a try and decide whether or not this can actually replace a computer that I took around for some general purposes. It's almost a bridge device in my opinion because it comes really comparable in size to the MacBook 12 inch and also the MacBook Air 11 and 13 inch, which is likely what you're going to be considering alongside the iPad Pro. I also went ahead and picked up the Apple keyboard and pencil just to help you decide whether or not it's really worth purchasing these expensive accessories to kind of complete the full experience of the Pro iPad. Also, just to keep in mind, the iPad is currently running iOS 10 at the time of making this review. I know iOS 11 brings a lot of new features that takes the iPad experience to a whole other level, but it's currently in beta, so it just isn't fair to judge this tablet based on beta software. But there's definitely a lot to cover with this iPad, so let's just go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to mention is the display. With any tablet, it's the core of what you're going to be looking at and interacting with, whether you're consuming media or using it as a productivity tablet. The iPad Pro has a 2224 by 1668 resolution that comes in at a PPI of 264. It's brighter than the previous generation iPad at 600 nits, and also has a new anti-reflective coating that makes it just 1.8% in reflectivity. Definitely the biggest change you're going to notice right away when you pick up this iPad though is the new Apple ProMotion, which gives it a 120Hz refresh rate. For those who don't know what this means, a previous generation iPad or iPad Pro had a 60Hz refresh rate, meaning that the pixels refresh 60 times every second. On the new 2017 iPad Pros, that has been doubled, so it just feels so much smoother when you're scrolling around, and just a general flow of using the iPad on an everyday basis. What Apple has done to optimize ProMotion though is that it only actually kicks in the 120Hz when it needs to, meaning it won't use any unnecessary battery. Although most normal people aren't going to go ahead and buy a brand new iPad just for the new refresh rate, the reason why it's effective is if you're an Apple Pencil user, the latency is cut down to 20 milliseconds. The original iPad Pro has a reported latency of around 38 to 49 milliseconds, or the equivalent of about 3 frames per second. For my testing, I didn't notice any lag on the original iPad Pro, and I was already quite satisfied with the Apple Pencil experience, but once you use the new iPad Pro and its 20 millisecond latency, you're very likely to notice a difference when compared. This allows the Apple Pencil to be one step closer to an actual pen or pencil or paintbrush by giving it a more responsive and fluid feel. I'm going to be talking about the accessories including the keyboard and the pencil later in this video. There's just way too many good things I could say about this display because it has a full P3 color gamut, and it also has very accurate colors, as features like True Tone adjust the display's color temperature based on your room lighting. Despite the display being 10.5 inches this time around compared to 9.7 of the smaller iPad Pro, the iPad's form factor remains rather similar to the previous 9.7 inch, only being slightly larger but having smaller bezels to compensate. Apple claims that this is for a full-size keyboard experience, but in my opinion, it isn't exactly full size yet. It's better, but I'm still not a fan of using keyboards on an iPad. On the inside, the iPad is a monster, has an Apple A10X chip with a 2.39 GHz clock speed, 4 GB of RAM, and is offered in 64, 256, and also 512 GB storage configurations that is non-expandable. Although benchmark scores are going to be irrelevant when you're trying to compare a tablet with a computer, just to put into perspective, the results from the benchmarks are actually in the waters of what some of the MacBooks this year are getting, which is quite impressive. Even though this is still a tablet running iOS and the mobile experience from Apple, it just really goes to show how much graphics performance this thing is capable of. The overall form factor stays the same for the most part, with the same thickness, the same materials as the other iPads, which is great already. A total of 4 speakers with 2 on each side, which is awesome. And also the connection port found on the left bottom side, allowing you to connect the keyboard or other accessories. On the front, you do have a physical home button, as well as a new and improved Touch ID 2 fingerprint sensor, which is fast for unlocking your tablet or also for mobile payments. But now onto the software, which is what I've been complaining about most with the iPad Pro line ever since it was initially announced. Over the past few years, I've had the MacBook 11 inch twice and also the MacBook 12 inch twice, and I've absolutely loved that as my mobile computer, so I didn't really see a reason why to jump on an iPad, especially if it had the full macOS 10 experience on my computer. I just really wish that Apple kind of integrated macOS 10 somehow into a touch experience with the pencil and with the keyboard on the iPad Pro line. But I will say that from my uses, I actually enjoyed using this as a sort of mobile computer more than I expected to. Although in the smartphone space, there's always a debate between the iOS and Android, and I can definitely see both sides of it. I think when you're considering a tablet, Apple is second to none the best tablet that you can buy because of the app experience and the optimizations that developers have made for this platform. Apps are just all very beautifully optimized for this large display in terms of the interaction, the touch intuitive interface, and just everything about it. I just love using iPad apps on the iPad. Multitasking works very nicely, and with 4 gigs of RAM, you definitely don't have any problems in terms of having the device slow down when you have many apps open in the background. Once again, picture-in-picture and multi-window is nice to use as well, and I just found the experience overall very fluid and really nice on the iPad because the specs that they put in this thing and just the horsepower is so capable. I think a large audience of people who are going to be buying the iPad Pro intend to do mobile video editing and also a lot of graphic design, especially with the Apple Pencil. One of the apps that takes the best advantage of the 2017 iPad Pro experience, in my opinion, is Affinity Photo. It brings a desktop graphic design and photo editing experience straight to your tablet while giving you full-fledged controls using a touch intuitive interface. It gives you complete retouching tools including burn, clone, blemish, patch, and red eye tools, which is something that I use a lot in my thumbnails. Non-destructive adjustments such as levels, curves, black and white for example, and you're also able to preview this all at real time. You're also able to make very accurate traces and selections using the Apple Pencil, and all of this is with professional graphic capabilities such as full RAW editing, the ability to work in different color spaces, and also many file compatibility formats including PSDs. I can honestly tell you that I really enjoyed using this app, whether it was for photo retouching or creating a new graphic element, especially with the more interactive experience of using an Apple Pencil. Affinity Photo has specifically been developed for Apple's Metal graphics technology, meaning it already takes advantage of the 120Hz refresh rate on the iPad Pro. What's great about it is that it's a one-time purchase with no monthly fees, and I would like to thank them for sponsoring this video with more information in the description section below. I know taking photos on an iPad is just something that will get you made fun of right away on the internet, especially with a 10.5-inch or even a 12.9-inch iPad, but this year's iPad Pro has a 12 megapixel camera that is exactly the same as the one on the iPhone 7 and the primary one on the iPhone 7 Plus. That just makes everything a little bit more tempting to go out and take some great photos on your iPad. As you might know, the iPhone 7's camera is amongst the best in the smartphone market when compared, but here you have a tablet that just blows every other camera out of the water, and I can say that with confidence. But here's just a look at some samples anyways that I took on my iPhone 7 because I really didn't want to go outside taking photos on this thing. It's also capable of doing 4K video, which you can edit straight from the tablet. And on the front, you have a 7 megapixel camera that is going to be good for just FaceTime calls, Hangouts, and if you want to take the occasional selfie. It can also record 1080p video, which, for reference, the MacBook 12-inch still has a non-HD webcam. One thing that the camera will be very handy for when iOS 11 comes around is for scanning files, especially with the integration of Note Scanner in iOS 11. But it's good to know that Apple at least made sure Pro earned its name in this iPad. The battery life on the iPad Pro is claimed to be 10 hours, and from my experiences through multimedia, I was able to get quite close to that. But for more graphic intensive tasks such as video editing or photo editing, I was getting anywhere from 4 to 6.5. For the most part, it's unchanged from last year, but the biggest complaint I have about the battery life isn't actually to do with the battery life, but instead the way it charges. As you could imagine, it's a pretty significant battery, and with the 10.5-inch and 12.9-inch iPad, that is the largest battery that still uses a lightning cable to charge from Apple. So for its size, it definitely takes a bit of time to charge, so it would have been nice to see some form of quick charge involved. But now let's spend some time to talk about some accessories for the iPad Pro, and the two primary ones are the Apple Pencil here, which was introduced last year with the iPad Pro, and yes, it does charge like this. And also the Apple Smart Keyboard, which kind of serves as a smart cover as well and makes it more like a laptop. People have been complaining that these are very expensive, but it is an Apple first-party accessory, so I don't think you can expect anything different. Despite how much people make fun of the Apple Pencil, I actually really enjoy it, and especially if you're using it with the iPad Pro this year with a 120Hz refresh rate and the latency cut down to 20 milliseconds. If you're a graphic designer or someone who plans to write, draw, and design using the iPad and the Apple Pencil, that's going to be crucial because it's really a make or break in terms of the overall experience of using a pencil. You want it to be as natural as possible, but using a tablet, for example, allows you to erase your mistakes, and it often also makes your drawings better than they're actually going to look in person if you used a pencil if you're terrible at drawing now, like someone like me. It's also great just to use as a stylus, and in my opinion, if you're going to be buying the iPad Pro, then it's probably worth picking up the Apple Pencil because it's really what brings out the experience of the iPad Pro. But if you don't really plan to use this or any graphic design intensive things, then you might as well just go ahead and pick up an iPad Air. Moving on to the keyboard, I think this is a must-have for any iPad Pro user. I really do not like using the touchscreen keyboard, and although the price is ridiculous, I think it's actually worth it if you plan to use it a lot for writing notes. With a 10.5-inch iPad, I think the keyboard is a perfect size. It's very easy to type, and the buttons are actually nice and clicky, but at the same time, that soft touch feel just makes it very pleasant to write on. One small complaint that I have is I wish the keys weren't as spaced out as they are, but otherwise I find myself typing very fast on this, and I can definitely recommend it for any iPad Pro user out there. At this price point though, it would have been nice to see the keyboard have a backlight, but you can also purchase one from Logitech, which is a third party. But here's the big question, is it really worth getting the Apple Pencil and the Apple keyboard with the iPad Pro when you compare it to the price of a MacBook Air or a MacBook 12-inch? This combo, for example, with all three of these things comes in, I think, over $1,000 after tax, and to me, that is quite expensive. You're really gonna have to ask yourself the question as to, do you miss the macOS 10 experience? Are you even a Mac user? And whether or not you like using a touchscreen or will use the Apple Pencil, in which you kind of have to just go with the iPad Pro instead of even considering a MacBook. Although the accessories are always going to be considered expensive when coming from Apple, what I really would have liked to see though is to offer a slight discount as a bundle if people were to purchase the pencil, the keyboard, and the tablet all together. Even if it was just like a $50 or $100 discount, I think it would show that Apple is trying to encourage you to purchase into the whole experience of the iPad and what it's really capable of, because this tablet is almost perfect. When it comes to the display, the performance, the form factor at this point, there's just not much I can really complain about. When it comes to wrapping everything up though, I'm not trying to be Apple biased or anything, but I really don't think there's any competition as to the best tablet you can buy on the market. Although I hate to say it, the cherry on top is that 12 megapixel camera, which just makes this tablet scream overkill. It's really more than you're going to need, even if you're someone who does a lot of graphic intensive work. If you're an iPad user already, I think you're really going to love this new iPad, and I personally loved using the pen, but at the price of what it costed with the base model, with the pencil, and with the keyboard and 64 gigs of storage, the total cost was within $300 of the 2017 MacBook 12-inch, which is what I've been used to and what I prefer in terms of an overall Mac OS X experience as opposed to iOS on a tablet. Although iPads are meant to be associated with media consumption, the reason why I haven't really touched on that in this review is because this is a Pro iPad. So if you want to just watch Netflix and YouTube, then just buy a standard iPad. Otherwise, this is an impressive piece of hardware and I don't really have many complaints of it, but if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.